On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, how well does financial advice hold up to scrutiny? So, welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Shawn Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and I am joined remotely today by your financial coach, George Corbello. How you doing, George?
Shawn, it's a pleasure as usual. Doing well. Wish I could be in studio, but I wish I could say I was like sick or something like that. I'm just lazy as heck today, so we're just gonna do this this way, and hopefully you forgive me, and we'll do this again next week.
I forgive you, except, people don't know when we record. Well, the people that know us know the day that we
Right.
record, so we could be
That's true.
recording the night before this is released for all
This
anyone knows.
is in the future. Holy moly! How you doing though, brother? Everything good? How's life treating you and the boys?
So by the time this episode comes out, I will be more than a week away from no longer being on the West Chase board of directors, no longer on my association board of directors. And I can tell you, even having not had that event happen yet, I feel like a huge weight has been lifted off of my shoulders.
No,
Um,
that's awesome.
yeah.
You,
Now,
again, you work hard. If you know Shawn, he works way too hard and does way too many things. So when you take something off the plate, that is a good thing for Shawn because then he can focus on some of the other things that are, again, all is important. But I'd imagine that list is long, my friend.
yeah. Now, to be fair, I enjoyed being on the board. I
All
enjoyed
right.
serving my community. I enjoyed serving my homeowners association. But there's something to be said for letting the new blood step in and take its turn, and just stepping back. And I get to focus now on being dad, and I get to focus now on the law firm. There were times where huge chunks of my workday were taken up by association business, and so that has now gone by the wayside, and
Right.
I have more time to devote to the law firm, to my boys, to the
That's good.
podcast.
There you
Although it
go.
never really interfered with the podcast, but I've got more time, so I'm excited about that.
That's awesome. See, and it's funny. I'm in a new community, so now I'm kind of contemplating should I be the new blood in our area to be participating in that activity itself. So it's one of those that I like the idea. Obviously, giving back to the community, but I don't know. I know there's a lot of responsibility, so it's one of those that time is one thing, but I'd imagine there's a lot of hard decisions that also need to be made.
Yeah, I had a mentor that used to say, "Wherever you go, there you are," and what he meant by that was, however you act is how people will perceive that you act. So that's why I've always said, if I'm going to do this role of being on the West Chase board, then I'm going to do it to the best of my
That's
ability.
your
If I'm going
ability.
to do this role of being the Cub Scout treasurer, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, not
Awesome.
because I want to show anybody up, not because this, that, the other thing, but it all kind of relates back to the law firm. If I do a good job as president of the association, people in the community should take notice of that and say, well, if he's good at being president, he'll be good at handling my case, or he'll be good. I can run this piece of advice by him. So, I try to do the things that I do either have to benefit me, have to benefit the boys, or have to
Yeah.
benefit the law firm. Now, if I can get a situation where they benefit all three, that's just kind of the
Gravy.
icing on the gravy, or
Yeah, gravy on the turkey of the ice cream
gravy on
bar.
the
Sure.
ice cream, or however it goes.
But it is definitely a good thing, is what we're trying to state there.
Yes,
That's good.
it
Okay.
is a very good thing. Speaking of good things,
Uh-oh.
I did make sure this morning, because I knew today is going to be a long day. I did make sure this morning to get my Magic Mind shot in. So that, I took as we record this, I took my Magic Mind shot, 8 hours ago.
Oh, wow. You've had a
And
long morning.
still going strong. Still going strong.
That's good.
So,
And
no,
that's the idea, right? You take it knowing that you have a long day, but it doesn't, it's not like when you need it, right? It's you can take it on a daily basis and it gives you again the jolt of energy without the crash. And I think that's a lot of folks are looking for something that and it doesn't kind of disrupt anything with you in how you feel, blood work, right? Or again, any of those kind of things that you have to worry about when it comes to being us old people.
right. Right, us old people. No, no sugar high, no sugar
Right,
crash. Just good old energy. It tastes good.
right.
I typically sip it. You could shoot it, but I
Yeah.
typically do. two or three sips of it, take it with my coffee, and it doesn't cause any jitters more than what, a cup of coffee would normally cause. So,
Nice.
yeah, I really like it. If you want to try out Magic Mind, you can go to our link. It's magicmind.com/crushing20 and enter the code crushing20. That'll give you 20% off your first order. And you can order one time or you can order a subscription. And actually, we just got our latest subscription, so I've got some here at the
Nice.
office for you, George, when you come in.
Awesome.
I figured that would be enough to tempt you to come in person, but apparently I
Well,
was
the
wrong.
next time now the next time I'm gonna have to, I'll fly in. That's what I'll do next time.
Okay. So what are we talking about today? How well does financial advice hold up to scrutiny?
I mean, there's got to be a lot of advice that's out there, right? So that it's all good. We always, everything I learned on the internet has to be true. So that's a lot of things that we do, but I think a lot of it too is how it applies to, real life. It's easy to be able to say save money, invest, save for retirement, go buy a house or don't buy a house. Or don't have debt. Debt is good. Debt is bad. You get the idea. There's a ton of advice that's out there. The question is how well does it fall when we talk about putting it under the microscope? That's the idea, right? You want to kind of like, how's it do in the real world? How are people using this advice? And because a lot of times it's like, well, it worked for me, right? It should work for you. And the problem might be, well, I've got a bigger income, or I've got a bigger nest egg, or, I have generational wealth, or I'm not working right now currently. So depending on life, it's one of those kind of things like, can the advice hold up in under the fire, under the microscope, in under scrutiny? And I think that's what we're trying to figure out here.
Yeah. So I did find an article. Now, this article talks about a fairly famous person who gives a lot of financial advice, and so I'm not gonna mention any names.
I got you. That's all right. Thank you for the shout out there.
But some of the advice, so I'll go through the different pieces of advice and then what this particular author has to say about that. So,
right.
Point number one, which you'll love, you need a budget.
Well, but duh, you need a plan. So I can't disagree with that one. The question though, when it comes to budget, right? It's what's the tool? What's the format? How's it, how's this budget look like? Do you write it down? Do you use QuickBooks to quick in, or a spreadsheet? Again, everyone is going to be very different, but I think getting hung up on the tool gets us into trouble. I think it's just knowing the budget. You need a plan. How much are you making? Where are you spending it? Make it simple. How you show it and things like that is a different way, but I can't disagree. That's still not bad advice there. So I think we're good there.
And so the reason that this article calls it, well, it doesn't call it bad advice, but part
Right.
of the, as it stands up to scrutiny, the data shows that some people, a lot of people, don't have a budget.
Yeah.
And those that have a budget don't stick to their budget.
Mm.
So it's like having a gym membership and never going to the gym. You're not going to lose weight.
I know a lot of people like that.
You're not going to lose weight by having a gym membership but never going to the gym. You're not going to create wealth. You're not going to save money. You're not going to save for retirement if you have a budget but you never look at it.
Correct. I mean, I think a lot of times the question really comes back to like, what is the, if we have the plan, why are we not looking at it? Why are we not following through on those? Those aren't numbers, because a lot of times the budget is all about the numbers. But we know when it comes to financial, personal finances, it's about the emotions, the head games. It's how disciplined we are in executing and follow through with some of the things that we put on paper, what we put in that plan. So I think it's not that there's scrutiny. I mean, it's a good idea to have the plan, but then what's causing us to not follow through on that? And that's where we got to deep dive a little bit more into that.
Right.
What type of but what kind of budget do you have then, Shawn? Is it, hey, by the way, we're not going to eat, any type of chicken or steak or anything like that. We're just going to do beans and rice or eggs and rice, or we're going to eat canned food in order to do our whatever the financial goals we may have. That's not a fun budget.
No.
that's a I mean, unless you're in that situation where you have to, in order to survive or get by, that's one of those kind of things. Like if your lifestyle is at a 10 and all of a sudden you're trying to drop your lifestyle in your budget to a 1, that's going to be very hard to actually follow through and do,
Yeah, and
regardless of what kind of plan you put in place.
right. And I I've said I used to say to my wife all the time, we would go out to dinner and she would say, "Well, how much is this drink?" And I'd say, "Honey, one if one drink puts us into foreclosure or bankruptcy, we got bigger issues than the one
Yeah.
drink." So now
You might want that drink because that's the next conversation we're having. Maybe that I
right.
do.
But I don't think the one drink is going to put you under. Now, one drink a day, two drinks a
Right,
day, eating out every day,
right.
yeah, that is where you can definitely change your mindset and change your budget to say, okay, I've got X number of days I can go out, and a lot of people undershoot. So even I did it. I was
True.
taking. I don't know if the joke is when you go to CVS or you go to Publix,
Hmm.
the receipts are so long you can wear them as a scarf when it gets cold. So for us Floridians, when it dips below 80, um, but one of them was Publix entered you into this sweepstakes if you did their online survey.
Right,
And it's funny when it got to the part where it said, "How much do you spend weekly on groceries?" It took me a little bit to recall that
right.
because I know what my budget says, but then it actually forced me to go back and take a look and say, well, am I spending consistent with my budget on food? And what I actually learned was I was spending about what I budget for food. I mean, some months were a little bit more, some months were a little
Yeah.
bit less. So I was proud of myself there. But it really got me thinking I have a budget, I stick to a budget every month. But when Publix asked, how much do you spend on food every month? I didn't know. I had to go look it up.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that because when it comes to budgets and plans, we get into autopilot, right? When you just like, oh, I get that feeling that we're around $200 or whatever the amount it is that's in the budget, and we tend to forget, like, no, again, some of the things that we should be doing is following through and following up on, how much is the number that I spent? What it was it that we spent on, so that there's not this guessing game.
Right.
And again, a lot of times when the budget doesn't work, it's that we think we're using it correctly, but it's that it is implementing these estimates and guessing, and there's no fact or concrete numbers behind some of that stuff too. So
Right.
yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. So the second point here in this article is you must get out of debt. And the funny part is
Mm,
the author quotes somebody
the
who's
guy.
relatively famous for
Hmm.
helping people get out of debt.
Yep, they got you.
And he said, when you spend your whole freaking life giving your money to banks who fill up the skyline and have furniture nicer than yours, that makes you stupid.
It's a little
A little harsh,
harsh, a little
but
harsh there.
typically, when I saw that comment, that did make me realize, yeah, it's funny. The banks tend to have some of the biggest buildings downtown, and
They
that's
do. Go
not
to
by
Delaware.
chance.
Go to Delaware. You have insurance companies and banks,
Yeah,
and a lot of those big in big cities like that. So that totally makes sense.
but I don't think debt is bad.
Well, and that's what they're arguing is that debt is bad, debt is good. Is there good debt? Is there bad debt? So, and a lot of that really comes back to, how does that apply to your life, right? What's the risk involved in taking that debt? If you don't have money or income in order to handle some of the debt that you have or you're going to have, because a lot of times it's more of like, well, don't worry about it. I can afford the new car because I can afford the payment instead of the actual value of the car. It's
Right.
how we think about some of these bigger purchases. I can afford the mortgage, but not the mortgage payment, but can I afford the expenses that come with being a homeowner? Those are the things that we tend to forget. So there's a lot of hidden costs and hidden risks when we talk about some of the advice that's out there, and really does it apply to our life? When we talk about theory and saying, hey, if you do this and do this and do this, it's great advice. But practically, how does that sound when we actually apply it to real life?
Right.
Especially if, like, well, if I don't make that much money, is that good? Will it still work? Or if I'm making a ton of money, will it still work? And that's always the question that comes back to when we talk about applying some of this advice to our situation.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Not all debt is bad debt. This the same author I remember, or the same speaker, the same personality, was also saying that people that charge things on credit cards for the points are stupid. And I pay off my card at the end of the month,
That's the key.
and I get points,
Yep.
and those points add up to a couple of $100 a year that allow me to buy other things that I wouldn't,
Yep.
that I don't have to pay for. So
Yep.
I don't think it's that using the credit cards makes you stupid. I don't
Right.
think that at all. What I think is you've just got to be able to budget. And a lot of times I say, can I afford to buy this cash? If so, let me put it on the card and pay off the card. If not, either I don't buy it, or I have to set myself the mentality of, okay, I'm going to put it on the card, but I'm going to pay it off in the next 2 months, 3 months,
Right.
some fast period of time where I'm not accruing a whole boatload of interest.
Well, and that's the problem today when it comes to credit cards, or especially credit cards. They're a tool. They're a tool in our arsenal to be able to use when it comes to personal finance. That tool, though, right now, what's the interest rate that we see with a lot of credit cards right now? It's
Oh,
above 25% right now.
yeah, easily in the 20s.
I mean, if you get an introductory rate, you're lucky in a sense, but even then, they're like 10 to 12%.
Right.
And again, 0% if you're, super lucky. But again, those are introductory. They don't stay with you after a period of time. The problem we run into is you're absolutely right. If I'm not budgeting and paying off this amount each month, the 1% cash back or the 3% cash back that you get, it's negated because you're paying it in interest. That's the game that most of these companies are looking for, is that yes, some of us will be very responsible in using the tool and be able to take advantage of these point system. And some of us will be kind of, I don't want to say tricked, but it's kind of, put in the situation where, it's good to be, because I'm gaining points, but I'm paying this company 25% in interest each month in order to actually have the card and have the debt that's on there.
So they gave me $200 cash back at the end of the year, but I gave them $5,000 in interest.
Exactly. You get the idea.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately, if we are not aware of the game that's being played, we get played, and we got to be careful with that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I think that's, for me bad is like college loans bad debt. I'm like, oof. The rate of return maybe 15 years ago, it was good to invest maybe in a bachelor's degree. Are we still looking at the same level today? And
Yeah.
that's the question we got to ask in regards to, like, dude, your bachelor's today, those bachelor's, the BS degrees, you're paying $150,000 now, depending on the school you have. Is it really worth, an art degree?
That's
There's certain degrees you'd like, wait a second,
Yeah, and
like,
I know
how are you going to make money?
you're dealing with that now with your
Yeah.
girls. That's a conversation I'm going to have. I remember when I went to college, my dad was very particular in making sure that the degree that I had was something that I could fall back on. I knew from the time I was in high school that I wanted to go to law school. But
Yeah.
but my dad made sure that my undergrad degree was something I could fall back on if law school didn't work out. My undergrad degree was in accounting, and I use that all day I use it in budgeting, I use it
Yeah.
helping clients, I use it in my own law firm. So he was very um, intentioned in making sure that my undergrad degree was going to help me out regardless of what I did beyond that. And I think that's where a lot of the student
Good
loan,
advice.
yeah, and advice that I'm going to pass down to my kids. But
I'm yelling at my kids.
yeah,
Yeah, come on.
but I think that's where a lot of the student loan debate kind of falls down. I mean, in
Yeah.
other words, I agree that why would you want to incur six figures of debt to engage in a major that doesn't lead to a job that pays you that much back?
Six figure. Yeah, I agree.
Right? I
Even
mean,
if it's overtime. I mean, if I get starting salary, but if the average salary for that particular degree and the job in that degree is nowhere near what that 1 year cost are, you might want to, again, I would reevaluate,
yeah.
the ROI that you have for that degree.
Yeah, and I'm not telling anybody that any one degree is better or worse than another.
No, no,
I'm
no.
just what's the return on that degree? What are you going to do with that degree when you graduate? And
That's it.
does that degree give you the ability? If it doesn't give you the ability, then use it as a side hustle. Use it,
Exactly.
continue to do the thing that you love, continue to make money doing the thing that you love. Just don't spend six figures to
That's it.
learn how to do it better.
No, I love the advice, and it's funny when you try to have that conversation with young folks. Right now, even the schools, it's very easy to be like, you got, best colleges, they got the best programs, they've got the nice lazy river. These are the things that you need going to college, right? And it's like, wait a second, like let's step back a little bit and really look at, and it's hard to tell an 18-year-old, 17, 18-year-old, like, let's look at your life and figure out what you're going to do over those next 10 years. I'd rather you go and say, like, try to start your own business, do
Yeah.
those kind of things. It's like invest in yourself. And those opportunities, then and education, again, education's important. I'm just like, I don't know, man. It's one of those kind of things. Like there's different ways to be able to get that experience that's needed.
Yeah, there's another guy that his reels pop up in my feed all the time. He's very conservative. He did not get a college education. He goes onto college campuses and debates kids all the time.
Right, right.
And what I've never seen anybody say to him, his general premise is that paying for college is a scam. And
I think I know who you're talking about, but go
yeah,
ahead.
and so for me, the other part about it though was that I learned skills other than school when I was in college.
Absolutely.
I learned social skills. I learned people
Yes.
skills. I learned
Yes.
networking skills. I learned how
Problem
to
solving skills. You got to be able to, here's a problem, solve for it. I mean, these are
right.
these are things that are just practical skill sets that you come from these schools.
Yeah, I learned how to take care of myself.
Yeah.
You know,
I barely. I think
barely.
I
I'm kind of managing. So I understand his point. I don't know that I 100% agree with him. I don't think
right.
I wouldn't go so far as to say college is
It's
a
a
scam.
scam. Yeah, I don't think I would go that far, but
But I do agree that, like I said, my dad made sure that when I signed up to go to college, it wasn't to get a degree in underwater basket weaving. It was going to be something that was useful when I
fair.
got out.
I mean, and that makes sense. I mean, my mom, again, I was the first in my family to go to college, from our family. And the big thing with it was, you're absolutely right. It was like, what's the major? I'm going to focus on sciences. I'm going to do these kind of things. But at that time, again, I'm old, so at that time it was information technology. It was, computers was everything was booming from that standpoint. So for me, it was, if path number one is not going to go there, path number two is this. I've told my youngest daughter, like, she's loves musical theater, all the arts. She's doing all these kind. So we got to look at theaters and things like that. My advice to her was, like, she's also very good. She's very creative mind, so she draws extremely well. I said, you know what? A minor in graphic design. Give yourself, if again, I'm not saying that theater won't work out or anything like that. What I'm saying is, have a backup plan
Right.
in regards to that. And I even told my, again, she looks at me funny. I'm like, do you need to go to college? I'm like, LA and New York are cities that you can just go and start auditioning like crazy.
Right.
They have traveling theaters and things like that. Like, get your name out there. There's different ways to get to those places than is through school. And that's, again, that for me, it's just more of like, how can you get to the same destination? I guarantee you there's several options than just college. And
Yeah.
I think that I just want her to be aware of what those options are. And I think everybody else should do that when it comes to, because we think it's always just one way. And it's like, dude, guarantee it will have plenty of ways to get you to that next goal.
Yeah, I considered a degree in music, and my challenge there was I knew that I wanted to perform, but really the only way to make it as a performer is to make it big, is almost
Yeah,
to starve for a little bit and then hit it big.
right.
If you wanted to make some money in music, it was to go the route of a teacher, but even
Right.
teachers don't make a ton of money. So
Yeah.
I really struggled with that. But at the end of the day, like I said, I knew I wanted to go to law school, and I knew that accounting was the better path to get me
Right.
there than was music. And so music is now my
Your
hobby.
hobby. Yeah, it's the side hustle. It's the hobby. It's what you enjoy. And I
Right.
think that's, at the end of the day, that's what we need, something that keeps bringing us joy. So I think
Right.
but you made an adult decision at a young age. Some of us don't do that though
What is
until
it?
we get to a little older.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut. Isn't that how it goes?
Once in a while.
So tip number 3, Live on less than you make. And I think this goes back to a point you made earlier about what do
Yeah.
you want your quality of life to be?
Yeah,
Um,
it's the lifestyle question. I mean, most of us want to be a Kardashian. I've always that's my dream. You know, every day I wake up and I'm still not Kim. But what you need to figure out though is, if you don't make the money to be a Kardashian, what can, you have to be realistic in regards to what it is that your lifestyle should be. And I think a lot of people, we talked about Henry's last time, right? And we talked about those kind of things. Most people when they make good money, it's like, well, I expect, shouldn't I be, shouldn't I have these nice things and cars and all of these things? My kids should be in four sports and it should be going to the Poconos each month, again, I'm from Pennsylvania, so Poconos each weekend. Like
that,
those are the things that we put in our head, and I think some of us need to really look at the reality of where we are, and sometimes we have to reset our lifestyle and go, okay, maybe I'm not this high up, but that doesn't mean it's not a motivation to get you there. It's just
right.
you got to have a realistic view of where you are.
In Florida, it would be an annual pass to Disney, not the
Oh, that's
Poconos.
it. Oh, that's why I didn't say that. Those Poconos are nicer.
It'd be an annual pass to Disney. But no, I agree. I mean, yeah, you need to live on less than what you make. But, the way that I kind of absorb that into my own life is, and we talked about it last week too, when I get a raise, I don't increase my lifestyle. I try to maintain the same or maybe bump it up just a smidge. Is that a formal measurement? A smidge?
A smidge, it's a little.
So I bump it up, I bump up my lifestyle just a little bit so that I don't start outspending what I make.
Yeah.
And
No, that
that's
makes totally makes sense. I think a lot of us too, it's in our lifestyle in our budget, some of it has to be there for saving, has to be there for investing.
right.
And a lot of us, the first thing that we go when it comes to a raise or a lump sum of money, it's where can I spend it?
Right.
It's like, what can I buy? And I think we just have to have a different view of what our financial goals are when it comes to how we do, when we have money that's been given to us, or we make more money or anything. We just have to have a different view on what that means for the overall goals that we've set for ourselves in our finances.
Exactly. I agree with you. So the last point here is to save money. And I think the point of the author here in bringing this up is that
Scrutiny, right?
you're not going to save yourself into being rich. So, not that saving's a bad idea.
No,
It's
saving's not a bad idea. I
it's
agree.
it's just that you're not going to save yourself to wealth.
Yeah, I mean, you can live like a pauper, I guess. I'm going to go Oliver Twist here, but you can live on a very basic lifestyle and save a lot of money. But I think the advice is really, the scrutiny is, most savings accounts don't make more than 1%, yield, and there's not a lot rate return. So I think that's where, like, if you're going to look for rate of return and really investing, that's where, again, there's invest in vehicle, make a little bit more on the return. That's where a lot of these authors, when it comes to scrutiny, when it comes to that advice, is have your nest egg, have your emergency fund. But if you're actually going to save for being rich, it's more of how are we going to invest our way
Yeah.
to get to that. And I think that's real estate, 401ks, IRAs, things like that,
Yeah.
that are going to be your tools and vehicles to get you there.
I agree with you there. I mean, there are some exceptions in terms of you hit the lottery or you get a big inheritance or you're born into wealth. But for the most part, you're not going to save yourself into being wealthy. You're going to save yourself into having enough money that you can turn around and invest that money and make a return on that money. And then that's ultimately how you get rich. So, the point of the article was financial advice that, how does it hold up to the test
Yeah.
of time? And it's not that saving money is a bad thing. Saving money is a great thing.
Yeah.
But then what do you do with the money you saved to make the money, all of these people that are unbelievably wealthy will tell you they make the money start working for more money. They make the
Yeah.
money
The
start
money makes
creating
money.
more money.
Yeah. And that's where, when you're, again, we talked to Henry's, right? Like, you go to the level of rich, like, you could be a high earner, but if your money is not, if you still have to work that hard in order to make that money, and the money's not making money, that's where, again, the different level of rich and just really wealthy, and I think that's where, there is a difference between the two. And I think that's what people need to be aware of when it comes to your strategy.
Yep.
Let me ask this then too, because not all advice is for everybody. Think about it like that. Like, we know, right? What's the common one? Invest early, do what you got to do, get as much as you can, as much when you're young, right? But what happens again, that advice is good if you have disposable income. What if we're living paycheck to paycheck? A lot of folks could be stretching themselves, even if you're young, trying to invest. You could put yourself in a position where, again, if I'm living paycheck to paycheck, I could put myself in a position where I'm not ready for the rainy day. So depending on the advice, and how you take it and how you apply it, I always say personal finances is personal. It's going to be specific to your situation. You have to be, I agree. It's one of those kind of things, like investing early is important, but you have to make sure you're in the right, situation to make sure you're doing it correctly. And a lot of that is having, a nice savings, making good income, and living within the lifestyle where in the budget you have everything you need, and you're not overstretching yourself to be able to make ends meet.
Yeah, I think it's a mindset thing, and we've talked about this before in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, if you want to save 5% of your paycheck and invest that into your retirement, but saving 5% of your paycheck, putting 5% of your paycheck into retirement is going to cause you to not be able to cover your bills, then don't put 5% in. Put 1% in. Put a 0.5%
Right.
in. Put $50 in. Put $25 in.
something.
Put
Yep.
something in
Yep.
to start the habit of investing. But you don't necessarily, what I got told when I first started working was, if your employer's going to match, then invest to the maximum that you can. So if the employer matches up to 3%, then you put in 3%. The employer will match 3%. Now you're
Yeah.
getting 6% put away towards retirement. That's great if you can afford to do that. If you can't put in 3%, put in 1%.
Exactly. Put something.
Have the employer match 1%. Are you getting
Yep.
a 6? No, but you're still getting free money from the employer by paying
Yeah.
1% and having them match 1%. And that's the, Warren Buffett, the beauty of compounding. So, 1% now isn't as good as 3%, but it's a lot better than 0.
Yeah, makes total sense. And I think a lot of us, that the emotions can play, how we, some of the behavior, some of the things, when there's a market downturn, we change. Like, oh, I got to do something different, because it's like, right? The advice should be stay the course. Try to just, like, guys, we know the market goes up and down. If we stay consistent with what we do, we're able to, we can manage those kind of problems that could arise when it comes to, what happens with life.
Right.
But I agree. I think for you, it's like, well, if I'm not saving $100, I must be failing. I'm not doing something. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, part of the thing that you want to do, it's funny. Like, can you do 10 push-ups? Like, right. Let's just assume that, right? Like, most people maybe can do, jump to, like, can I do 100 push-ups when it comes to exercise and stuff like that? I'm like, dude, start with one.
Right.
Start building a habit where every day you do one push-up, and then in a few days you do two, because what we're trying to do is you're doing something. The hardest part is going and doing it consistently first, before we jump and start doing, running triathlons and doing bikes, going to Tour de France and all these kind of things. We put ourselves in, like, get me to the end, and yet we don't want to do the small habits, small changes that are needed in order to get us jump started, because that's the hardest part, is usually just getting started.
Yeah, I read a book that I think it's called The 1% Solution or something like
Yeah.
that. And the concept of the book is, if you get 1% better every day, people will say you'd be 365% better at the end of the year, but it's actually exponentially more than that, because
Right.
if you're 1% better today, you're 1.1% better tomorrow. And it continues to build on yourself, so that by the time you get to the end of the year, you're, whatever, 5, 6, 7, 8%. And by the time you add up all that, it's thousands of a percentage better than you were
Right.
when you first started, even though it's just a 1% every day. So like you said, when I used to run consistently, when I started running, there was no way I could do a 5K without stopping multiple times.
Of course.
My best time was I think it was like 30 minutes and a handful of seconds to run a 5K. But that wasn't my time the first time I ever ran a 5K.
Right.
So I think the first time I ever ran a 5K, I was lucky to finish in under an hour.
In my case, I think it was like 4 days. So I'll let you know. I'm still walking, bro.
That's where that annual pass to Disney comes into play. You can walk Disney, and that'll get you your
get your Busch Gardens pass, bro. You'll get your 5K in 1 hour there.
There you go. So.
But I think that's the beauty of it is for me, it's always about shaping and habits wise. Do something small to get you the big results. So I mean, fantastic, fantastic advice. Sometimes there's advice out there that I would say, really good. And I think, Shawn, you're spitting some good advice today.
Like
Love
I said,
it.
every once in a while, a blind squirrel finds a nut. What you don't have to be blind to find is your order of Magic Mind. Wow, did you see all that? I'm a poet, and you didn't even know it.
I didn't even know it, bro. Go ahead.
I rhyme all the time.
Uh-oh. Okay, stop. Don't do that.
So, yeah, they're going to pull the sponsorship after that. So if you want to check out Magic Mind, check out some additional focus during the day, additional focus when you need it. No sugar high, no sugar crash. Go to magicmind.com/crushing20. That'll give you 20% off your first order. Thank you to Magic Mind for being a great sponsor and friend of the show. Also, if you want to support us, you can go to the Patreon page, patreon.com/crushingdebt. You can help support us there. And then finally, our friend, our sponsor, our longtime sponsor, Sam Cohen. If you're an attorney or title company, you need title insurance, you can always go to attorneysfirst.com. You can contact Sam. He'll give you an apples-to-apples comparison if you need title insurance. I'm sorry, not if you need title insurance, if you need malpractice insurance.
There you go.
And you are a title company or attorney. Good Lord. The end of the show is
First time. It's okay.
Yeah, first time. It's fine. I'll figure it out eventually. 434 shows in. I'll figure it out eventually. So other than that, let's see if I can get this right. We hope that at the end of the month you have more money rather than at the end of the money you have more month. And we will talk to you in next week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.